From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk. The McLaughlin Group is brought to you by MetLife. Guarantees for the if in life.
Issue 1, the eagle versus the bear.
The United States this week publicly criticized Russia's military action in the Transcaucasian nation of Georgia.
Bullying and intimidation are not acceptable ways to conduct foreign policy in the 21st century.
The Russian president hasn't kept his promise to abide by the terms of this ceasefire and have Russian forces withdraw. Russia is very clearly isolating itself. It's becoming more and more the outlaw in this conflict.
The U.S. criticism has been so sharp and unremitting that Secretary of Defense Robert Gates has pointed to a possible enduring impact on the relationship between the two superpowers.
I do think that the tone of the relationship certainly has been changed by the actions that the Russians have taken in Georgia, and I think that it has prompted a fairly serious reevaluation in the United States about the breadth of the kind of strategic relationship and cooperation that we might be able to have with the Russians going forward.
Question. Assume that the cost of protecting Georgia is to alienate Russia. Is that in the United States' national interest? Pat Buchanan.
Well, you're talking about bringing Georgia into NATO as they're talking about bringing Ukraine into NATO. That would be insanity, John. First, we're not going to fight for Georgia, as is quite clear from the fact right now we're not doing anything militarily. And to commit yourself and give Georgia a war guarantee would be an act of folly which would really start a second Cold War. The truth of the matter is the Georgians started this fight, the Russians finished it. The Georgians are not going to get back Abkhazia. They're not going to get back South Ossetia.
What's Abkhazia?
Abkhazia is a breakaway province, much larger on the coast of Georgia. South Ossetia.
Black Sea.
Yeah, South Ossetia is only 70,000. My guess is that's going to eventually be annexed by Russia. The United States ought to deal with the fact that they've had a setback and a humiliation, but not do something stupid and reactive and give a war guarantee to a country we're not going to defend. The greatest relationship, or most important in the world just about, is between the United States and Russia, and we ought not to imperil it because of this incident.
Hello.
Well, for an extremely lame duck administration, the rhetoric coming from the President and the Secretary of State have been extreme. I thought Secretary of Defense Gates has the relationship in context. There will be a cost here. But you know, Pat is right. The provocation came from the Georgians, and the president of Georgia basically won election after a coup in which he promised to return the separatist provinces to Georgia, a promise that he's been trying to keep. And Russia was ready, perhaps overly ready, waiting, eager for the provocation, and they behaved in a brutish way. But the overreaction of the Bush administration, it seems to me, is also engineered in part to boost the Republican candidate, thinking that this may be the October surprise come a month or so early.
Overreaction by the United States is an absurd way of describing what is going on here. You have Russia, which is trying to reassert itself, create new spheres of influence, reestablish its old spheres of influence. They have invaded a tiny pro-Western democratic neighbor that happens to be very friendly to the United States. And the American president is supposed to sit by and just let the Russian tanks roll right through? That is absurd. The Russians over the last couple of years have been the chief provocateur of every major international incident that the United States finds itself in, with the exception of Al-Qaeda. That is that the United States did nothing when the Russians began supporting the Iranian nuclear program. We did nothing when the Russians began supporting the Syrian military program. We did nothing when the Russians resumed their flights of strategic bombers right off the coast of the United States. We said and did nothing because we didn't want to alienate them.
History lesson.
Thanks for the history lesson. Let her finish. Let her finish.
Is about the provocateur in all of this, and to say that the United States of America is supposed to sit by and allow all of these provocations to go by without an adequate response is absurd.
When you taunt the Russian bear, you better make sure you have something other than excuse me, Make sure you have something other than blanks and rhetoric
Clarence,
to fire.
I'm going to call you in one moment, but let's get back to this provocateur. Who was the provocateur? Was it Russia or was it Georgia?
The Russian-Georgian conflict has stirred a lot of analysis, but relatively little of it has focused on what provoked the Russian action. But one senator did allude to it. Indiana Senator Dick Lugar, 32-year Senate veteran and former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The senator pointed out who attacked first, Russia or Georgia. Lugar says Georgia.
The facts are that our State Department advised Mr. Saakashvili not to attack because the Russians were armed, they were ready.
The former revered Soviet Union leader Mikhail Gorbachev, whose perestroika and glasnost policies produced the 1991 independence of Georgia and Eastern Bloc nations, said this to Larry King, pointing to Georgia as the provocateur.
Russia could not avoid addressing this assault and this devastation and the killings of people, the devastation of the city. I don't know why it so happened that it is being presented that Russia invaded Georgia. This is really disinformation. This is all lies.
This is really disinformation to say that Russia was the provocateur. What do you think of all that?
Well, in fact, there is an argument that is being made, an argument can be made, that President Saakashvili overplayed his hand, that he thought the United States was going to support him more strongly than we have, and as Pat says, more strongly than we are likely to do.
Well, he knows that the President of the United States has a policy of strategic encirclement of Russia.
Right.
Witness what we're doing in Poland. Witness what we are doing in the Czech Republic.
That's right, but we don't want to endanger, though, our economic relations, our commercial relations, the Russian oil. Neither does Russia want to endanger their leverage with NATO, their membership in the World Trade Organization that they're trying to get. There's a lot of diplomatic leverage that we can use here, and that Saakashvili could have used, but he didn't. He pushed harder, and suddenly he did provoke the big Russian bear.
Do you think that the President now understands that we have a different Russia than we had immediately after at the beginning of the Cold War?
You mean, is he ready to look into Putin's eyes again and read his soul?
Well, no. How far it has come with its development, particularly its oil development, its gas development, and how it feeds Europe?
It is a different world now, and Georgia does have the only pipeline coming out of there that's not controlled by Russia, although militarily now that may have shifted.
Well, what is the level? To what extent do we give Russia a benefit of the doubt, inasmuch as the provocation occurred by Saakashvili of Georgia?
Here's what, look. Saakashvili got what he deserved. That was stupid. And the Americans had to know it was coming and should have told him, stop, don't do this. We didn't do that. The Russians overdid it.
Well, there were three people from the State Department who told him that.
Well, the President of the United States should have got on the phone instead of fooling around with the volleyball players.
This is true. Saakashvili thought he had the President with him because the President had gone over there 2 years ago and said, I'm on your side.
Saakashvili, I don't care how much they love him or how, quote, democratic he is. The relationship with Russia is vital to the national security of the United States, and Abkhazia and South Ossetia are not.
Who has more nuclear weapons, Russia or the United States?
I think they're probably roughly equal.
They're roughly at parity. That's correct.
We got more.
Does that tell you something?
Well, no, yeah, they're the second most powerful nation on earth. And look, you don't step on...
Do you remember when the President was asked to visit the Black Sea about 2 years ago or 3 years ago to visit with Putin? And Putin told him how obnoxious it was for us to put our missiles in Poland.
Sure, let me tell you.
And how painful it was. And against that...
John, here's what's going to happen. We put the missiles in Poland and also anti-aircraft missiles manned by Americans. Look for the Russians to put the S-300...
Can you blame the Russians? Can you blame the Russians?
Russians will put anti-aircraft missiles in Iran and Syria. You watch.
Now, what do you think of all that?
I find this whole conversation an out-of-body experience, that we are blaming the United States, the Western democracies, the Eastern European democracies, and the new democracy in Georgia for the fact that the Russian imperialist power is back, sending their tanks rolling across sovereign
They were
borders.
provoked to do so.
Let me tell you something. Those Eastern European leaders who were so worried about a resurgent Russia that they wanted, and by the way, the missile interceptors going into Poland are now at the request of the Polish government. Don't you think those leaders watching what's happening in Georgia, that now those fears were founded, that everybody wants to everybody wants to appease Russia, hoping that the crocodile doesn't eat them last.
And Al-Qaeda in Iraq now.
For heaven's sakes.
What's the way out of this crisis?
It's a question of reality.
What should Bush do now? What's the way out of the crisis, Pat Buchanan?
Well, what Bush is going to have to do is realize he's not going to reverse this thing. Quite frankly, the way for the United States after Bush is let's call and demand free elections in Abkhazia, free elections in South Ossetia. Do they want to remain with Georgia? Where do they want to go?
What are the indications so far?
Well, look, they don't want any part of the Georgia.
They want their independence. That's what they want.
Well, Ossetia is too small for independence. It ought to go to Russia. Abkhazia can be independent.
Ossetia can handle independence.
70,000
people.
70,000 people?
It's about the size of Rhode Island. Look at Rhode Island, for heaven's sake.
Got more than 70,000 quickly.
I think the president should shut up and go away. He's a lame duck. And if you're looking at these breakaway provinces, if all around the Caucasus you've got individual ethnicities yearning to be countries, it is not something out of the U.S. national interest that we have either the capability or the need to get involved in. We should have learned in Iraq, when you start playing around with ethnicities and nationalism, there's hell to pay.
What do you think of this idea?
Why do you think that those in South Ossetia or in Abkhazia want to become part of Russia? Because the Russians went in very cleverly and started handing out Russian citizenship and Russian passports, so of course their allegiance is going to be there. They created this situation as a pretext to go in. The American president should do what John McCain called for many months ago, and everybody laughed at him, which is kick Russia out of the G8. He should freeze. There has to be some penalty for the Russians invading a sovereign country.
Isolate Russia. Where do you think Russia will go?
We've got the leverage, but Bush is too deep into his lame duck period to really do anything effectively here now. This really kicks over to the next administration.
And you can't isolate an oil-rich country that has basically Europe held hostage because of dependence on oil.
John, isolate Russia, and Russia will go to China, Iran, Syria in a big way. You really want it? Well, why not be smart like Reagan and draw them away from the Chinese and make them a friend of the United States?
You can only do that if they want that, Pat. They don't want
that. The Russians do want it.
The United States as an enemy, and they're supporting all our enemies around the world.
What Bush
if they did, they would have grabbed all of Georgia.
As you know, I was in Georgia last month.
Did you see
and I must tell you that they are lovely, marvelous, high-spirited, and great workers, great psychic energy, and they're great to be with.
And bad judgment.
But I think Saakashvili stumbled badly when he assumed that the president, with his encirclement through NATO, would back what Georgia was doing as well. And I think they feel victimized, and I think they should feel victimized. And I think it behooves the United States to do what we can to relieve their misery, and also to keep our relationship with Russia, to restabilize that. In that regard, this is what I would do. I would do what we did when we got Spain into NATO, when Spain held a national referendum. I would see to it that the Polish people have a referendum and decide whether or not whether or not they should welcome the missiles that the president wants to put in.
Well, they probably do right now.
The government did, but not the people.
The Polish people now do by 70%.
Well, I'd like to see what they feel.
John, I don't care what the Polish people, think.
The idea is to repair the relationship with Russia.
Exactly.
So you slow down the placement, and he leaves that to the next president, and he slows it down by getting a referendum in place from the Polish people.
I don't care how the Polish people vote. You don't let them decide whether we got to get face-to-face with Russia. We decide that, and the answer is no.
Poland, he needs a lever to get time, the president done, and to repair the relationship. That will slow down the emplacement of missiles in Poland, which are obnoxious to the Russians. When we come back, Obama rocks. Don't you?
If, for such a small word, it packs a wallop. If I live to 100, If Social Security isn't enough, if my heart gets broken, if she says yes. We believe if should never hold you back. If should be managed with coverage that builds on what you already have. Together, we can create a personal safety net, a launching pad for all those brilliant ifs in the middle of life. Call on our expertise and get guarantees for the if in life. After all, we're MetLife.
We've provided a platform for success for some of the most respected companies in the country. We fueled their growth with a highly educated workforce and a can-do, pro-business attitude. Just ask our newest business partner, Toyota. Visit Mississippi.org to see what we can do for you.
Issue 2, Aloha, Hawaii.
Senator Barack Obama is back from his holiday, and the Democratic convention is upon us, and Obama is combative, hurling charges at John McCain.
The same guys who brought you George Bush are now trying to package John McCain. Don't you dare suggest that I'm less patriotic than you, or that I've got political motivations in taking the positions that I've taken.
Question, why is Obama lashing out at McCain now? I ask you, Clarence.
Because he's been called too soft by his own supporters, saying, you know, where's the fight? And also, McCain has scored some gains in the polls during that period in which he's been sniping at Obama for being too much of a celebrity, while at the same time saying Obama's not known well enough. It's a weird argument, but it works. And so Obama now is coming out more aggressively, talking about, well, you don't know John McCain either, and I'm going to tell you about him.
Well, Obama basically ceded the month of August to McCain, and McCain, you know, he was off in Europe and Hawaii, and McCain went negative, and it drew some blood. And it seems to me that Obama is now off the mat. He got a nice gift from Senator McCain, who couldn't remember how many houses he has, and if you live in a glass house, you should at least know how many you have. And that allows Obama to tap into the populist economic vein and show how out of touch McCain is. It's a supermarket scanner moment, Pat. You'll remember that.
None of John McCain's houses was financed by Mr. Rezko, the crook. And that's McCain's comeback. But look, Obama's problem is this, I mean, we just saw him. Don't you dare. Did you hear? Look, you're in a street fight. You don't say, don't you dare call me a name. Obama does not know how to do it. It is not natural or instinctive.
What would Pat do? What would a street brawler do?
Don't you dare say that about Obama.
Tell us, instruct us.
Well, listen, we do know how to do these things, Eleanor. We used to do them for Nixon and Reagan.
You know, presidential
I'd be
campaigns.
Keating 5.
That is exactly right. Presidential campaigns are not a game of pinochle. This is hardball politics. Barack Obama has tried to avoid it for a long time, and he's had some great success in this new kind of politics and positioning himself as the fresh face who doesn't engage in that kind of thing. Well, by not engaging in that kind of thing, he has seen his poll numbers fall. He's seen John McCain's tick up, and now I think it's finally dawned on him that he has to join this fight or he's going to lose. The problem for him, and this is a real danger for Obama, I think, is that because he's packaged himself as this new kind of politician, that if he starts getting down into the negative ads and the mud throwing, he looks like everybody else.
The timing you think he was really a sad sack at Saddleback?
Oh, he was terrible. Yeah, I mean, McCain had his best night.
You're missing the point. Yeah. You're missing the point. The point of Saddleback is that Obama showed up. John Kerry's biggest regret may be that he did not go for the evangelical vote. Obama just showed up for the second time at Saddleback.
Give a straight answer to the question.
Well, you know, he's learning.
He's not going to win. He's not going to win white evangelicals. But when you have the leading white evangelical voice calling him my friend, that is an entree to
I think
that
what he's done is
voters.
he's effectively moved beyond Saddleback.
But here's what he needs, John. What Obama needs more than anything else, because he's not good at it, he needs surrogate. Remember Nixon we had John Conley, Bob Dole, and Spiro Agnew doing the cutting. He needs surrogate.
What a hall of evil. I don't think he needs a
49 states, Alan, 49 states.
Well, Pat, I
remind you
of that great Chicago historical figure, Finley Peter Dunn, who said, politics ain't beanbag. And I believe that's an old Chicago slogan. It's only summer. after Labor Day, when things start to get hot, you'll see the surrogates,
put his
etc.
dukes on?
Right now, yeah, it's summertime, and you got a lot of soft, moderate swing voters in the middle now. It doesn't firm up until after Labor Day.
Well, don't you dare criticize Milhouse. Okay, the Obama nation.
The number of attacks on Senator Barack Obama is growing, notably a book written by Jerome Corsi titled The Obama Nation, Leftist Politics and the Cult of Personality. The Obama campaign claims that the book is full of quote-unquote vile smears. The campaign produced an online 40-page rebuttal. Also in New Mexico this week, Obama insinuated that John McCain is behind the Corsi book.
This may not be directly affiliated with the campaign, but suddenly, magically, you've got the same guy who wrote Unfit for Command. He comes out with a book saying that I'm a nut. And people are questioning my patriotism and saying, and John McCain himself personally says I'd rather lose a war so I could win an election.
Question, is Obama too thin-skinned for the rough and tumble of politics? Pat Buchanan.
He says, I'm not a nut. Why is that his response?
Well, he also came back with a 40-page rebuttal. This stuff does get into the internet bloodstream, but this is not like the Swift Boat Revisited. They don't have a cast of characters visiting the cable shows. They don't have TV ads. It's over the top. Even my friends on the right grimaced when we learned we were going to talk about this on the show.
The problem is that the Democrats keep nominating these effete, coolly academic guys who think they can fend off attacks, in a classic kind of way. That's not how politics works, and Obama had better get a thicker skin going into this election.
Well, he goes from one week to the next. Some weeks he's too tough, too Chicago. Next week he's too soft. We saw the same thing a year ago when Hillary Clinton was way ahead of Obama in the polls, and he was at the Howard University debate, and folks said, hey, he's too soft. Hillary won that debate, and she did, but Obama's folks told me then, just wait. They got their own timetable, so let's talk about it again in September.
I don't think he's too thin-skinned for politics, but I think he leaves the impression that he's an academician more than he is a politician. We'll be right back with predictions.
University of Chicago.
The McLaughlin Group is brought to you by Mississippi Development Authority. Visit Mississippi.org to see what we can do for you.
We've provided a platform for success for some of the most respected companies in the country. We fueled their growth with a highly educated workforce and a can-do, pro-business attitude. Just ask our newest business partner, Toyota. Visit Mississippi.org to see what we can do for you.
For people close to retirement, there are plenty of ifs to go around. If our savings will last, if we should take Social Security when we hit 62 or 67. MetLife can strengthen your retirement plan by providing a lifetime stream of income that's guaranteed and that works together with your investments, helping you create a safety net that brings Happy New Year's with guarantees for the if in life. MetLife can help make the most of what you have in retirement.
Predictions, Pat.
McCain's ahead 1 week after the election.
Let's use that as a question. How many points will McCain be ahead in 4 weeks?
I think Obama maintains his fragile lead, and nobody breaks out until the debates.
A few weeks after the end of the Republican convention, McCain up by 1 point.
By 1 point.
1 week after the convention, there'll be a virtual tie within the margin of error.
Too close to call. Bye-bye.